hands. Thank you, Abigail. Luis, move on to you. Welcome to our organization. We're glad to have you.
Thank you, and good morning, members of the board. Good morning to our strong leadership team. My name is Luis Portilla. I am the academic counselor for All People Charter Schools, and I will be presenting our areas of opportunity, which are support more students for college and careers. We are currently seeking to increase college awareness, college matching, matriculation, and the creation of a college-going culture among all of our students and families by developing workshops in English and Spanish and creating partnerships with local colleges to help us provide our students stronger path to post-secondary options. CTE, Career Technical Educations, and I am quoting this from the CTE fact sheet. CTE programs in high school improve success in college. Students are more likely to go to college on post-secondary programs, and a total of 79% who were part of a CTE program in California did enroll to a 2 or 4 year institution within a couple of years. And this is a big deal especially to our students, because early career exploration offers a sense of direction, which aligns directly with our vision of opening doors and developing lives. Lastly, I would like to point out that current enrollment with our local junior and community colleges. And our reality is that our concurrent enrollment is extremely low and almost non-existent across many of our campuses. And taking into consideration that one of our core values is that education needs to provide more options, not less, we have a great opportunity to create a solid concurrent enrollment system pivot-wide by promoting our college partnerships and facilitating enrollment to all our students and promoting this to families as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Are there comments or questions? Steve, go ahead.
So I endorse these very, very strongly. I think this is really important. One of the questions I have, though, is if let's assume that student X does not have college-bound ambitions and has other ambitions, and we support that student through those goals. Would the charter authorizers view that as a success? How would we categorize that to our authorizers so that we are truly supporting the students in their ambitions?
If I could jump in on that, because it's an authorizer related question, but I want to also just say, now you know why we love Luis so much. He is an awesome addition to our team. You did a great job, Luis. He's got his hands in a lot of different areas and came in with this incredible experience and background. But to answer your question, Steve, specifically, it really depends on the authorizer. It's different in each location, but we, myself, Liz, and Lindsay are usually the ones involved most with the MOUs and working with the reauthorizations. And we have successfully been able to build it into most of our MOUs. What the measurement of our success at Pivot is different, and here's what that looks like. And they agree to those terms. And it's not all about the California dashboard, and it's not all about going into a UC school. That said, we have to make our dashboard look better, because the dashboard looking better means we're serving students better. In other words, how many kids are in CTE programs? And you're going to hear in a little bit from Teresa specifically what we're doing differently this year in CTE and going into the future than we've done in the past, because it's in our LCAP and you all have made this a primary focus of ours. So I think we've been fairly successful in convincing all 4 of our authorizers, given our student population, that we have a different measurement of success and that they are willing to allow us to present data that proves that we are being successful in those areas. It still does come back to test scores. I hate to say it a lot of times, but they've agreed that it could be our internal measurements and our internal test scores, iReady and NWEA and some of the other internal benchmark assessments that we administer throughout the year. So I think, and again, we could get a new superintendent, we could get a new president of a school board, and that could all change. That's the horrors of being a charter, right? You get one different personality and what they want from us could change. But I think we have a historical relationship with most of them to say that they have accepted that given our population and the fact that we have kids for such a short amount of time, we need to be able to prove that while they are here, we have made a difference and we have, you know, helped them be more successful.
Okay, I have a question. Looking at these opportunities, and I certainly appreciate them, but and forgive the term, they're narrow. They're about college, career, CTE, junior colleges. I am curious because this is us looking forward today. Was there any discussion of opportunities about our facilities or our team or our longevity in communities or some of the marketing concepts we talked about earlier? Or I would hope as we look to the next year, 18 months, 3 years, there are a broader spectrum of opportunities. So I'd like to hear, Shana, from you or other team members. Certainly these are good opportunities, but others, I would like to expand on this a little bit.
Yeah, I'll start and I'll let others jump in. We did talk about the use of the facilities. We did talk about saving money on facilities if we switch the use of facilities. We did talk about hiring and use of staff differently and hiring different kinds of staff, for an example, so that you're not going, what is she talking about? Paraprofessionals or paraeducators, perhaps to, you know, work on the school site program, those kinds of things. So we talked about facilities, we talked about staffing. We meet with Trepepi Smith every week. So we work with them on marketing, and all the admin staff are invited to attend those meetings, but it's usually myself and Lindsay, sometimes Liz, sometimes Corrine. So we talk about marketing and how to adjust marketing based on the, you know, the current times with them weekly. What was another thing you asked about for other opportunities? We didn't talk about opportunities in the community except when it came to the use of facilities. We partner very well in Sonoma County with many organizations, thanks to Corrine and Jenny's precedence of doing that in North Bay. And, you know, Craig started out down in San Diego with San Diego, and Riverside is now in a new location and just starting those relationships. So we didn't spend a lot of time on that the last 2 days, to be honest with you. These are the fundamental ones that we feel we need to get better at. They almost showed up as weaknesses, sort of, but they're not, because we're actually doing them and we're doing them better than we've ever done them before, but we need to continue to make it better. So that's why we're like, these are the opportunities where we can serve our kids best. And there's only so much blood you can get from a turnip. So new initiatives was not a huge discussion. It's taking what we have and making it work better for everybody, including our staff.
I totally understand that last comment, believe me. And so that's why I guess I wanted us collectively to embrace then that as we look forward with the capacity we have, these are the areas we believe are the most fruitful. I just want to make sure we all commonly understand that. Okay.
Yeah, that and the usage of staff and different staff.
Got it.
Those were the biggies.
Okay, other comments or questions from board members? I appreciate that clarification. Yes, Kevin, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to welcome you, Louise, to the Pivot family and commend you for the work you're doing. I would just like to strongly support and advocate the opportunities which are posted here. I think that there has been a movement. Well, there's always historically been an opportunity for secondary students to participate in a collaborative program from their with their local community colleges, as well as regional occupational programs. ROP, for example, is very strong in some communities, as well as there are very strong partnership opportunities with local trade unions. In Newark Unified, we did partnerships and apprenticeship programs with the local unions, but they also worked with, in concert, the community colleges for some of the technical education that was required to become an apprentice. And those are very viable alternatives, especially for students who need income while they are going to school, because the apprenticeship programs will actually pay the young person a salary while they're going through the training program to reach their certification. And I think these are especially attuned to what we were talking about previously in meeting the needs of our diverse ethnic populations, because we have to, I think, also look at some of the data that has nationally been coming out in regards to students choosing a 4-year collegiate program. You know, who are those students? Why are they choosing it? What are the fields they're choosing it in? And what professions are being accessed through community college or apprenticeships? And the data is very different than when I was looking at college, or many of the board members. You know, there's strength in women applying to college, women of color applying to college. There's been a reduction in the number of young men applying for traditional colleges. And so I think that this really guides us with some of the national and local data to be able to really meet the needs of our students. And then the last thing, which I know Luis acknowledged this already, the community colleges want to knock at our door and say, please come and be my partner. You know, what I heard from the community colleges is, we have all these available resources for you, and most secondary districts and secondary schools are not accessing them to their full potential. And so I think that it's exceedingly exciting that we can do this, and we're lucky that where our schools are located, that we have very strong community colleges and universities. But for example, you know, in the North Bay, Santa Rosa Junior College is a few blocks down the road and on a major transportation link, and is easily accessible for our students. So I really, the concept of K-12 plus 2 is an advocacy that I've held for many, many years, but I know other board members have held as well. And I think that these actions that our staff have articulated really support that, and they support our growth as an organization and having an impact on both the lives of our students and an impact on what they give to our communities, which I think has also been one of our goals.
Thank you. Excellent comments. Okay, well, I think that will definitely be something we're going to discuss in a little bit then. That's great. Thank you, Luis. Again, welcome. We're very glad you're here. Jenny, you bet. Jenny, go ahead. Tell us what our threats are as we look forward.
That's such a negative word, I feel. I'm so sorry to have to report on that.
How do you assign this one?
Right?
Challenges, opportunities for new growth.
How about we say things that could keep us from doing what we really want to do?
Inhibitors.
Things to look out for.
Inhibitors, challenges,
right. And
opportunities for us to change the world by.
And I do, you know, I do, as all things in Pivot, I was thinking of that word opportunities, Jim, and how you wanted to recognize more of our opportunities. And having been here for 8 years, one of the opportunities I think we're really embracing and moving forward, going to embrace more, is we're in this really unique position. And I could acknowledge it's a unique position for Pivot, having been here for so long, where we're retaining staff. And I think we all recognize that that's something that we want to reward and keep doing, because our staff is getting to the point where we're able to recognize what each individual person has mastery in specifically. And I really appreciate how this organization is starting to move people into their fields of mastery. And Jana has an area of expertise that makes these threats less threatening. And so one of our threats is legislation that's constantly changing. Legislation around charter schools, specifically non-seat-based charter schools, legislation around COVID, those are all threats to us, but Jaina has a mastery and an expertise that I think allows us to stay really in touch with what's going on. And so that allows us as a staff to kind of keep focusing on what we need to keep focusing on, but we do need to recognize it's a threat. And then also the current climate for working in education, just general teacher shortages that make it hard for us to find strong candidates, the great resignation across the nation, the teacher burnout rate, just all those things that we've already touched on. So I don't really need to go over them again, but it's just something to recognize as a threat. So that's it from me. And thank you, everyone.
Comments from board members? I think those make sense. I would have said something similar. Okay, I appreciate that. And we'll look at those as inhibitors or things that keep us from doing what we want to do. And those will be very important to remember later. Okay, that was very, very good, team. Thank you for walking through that. Are there anything from the board members before we move off of this that you believe wasn't emphasized? So to be, again, specific, and remind us, I'm looking around the room and there are a lot of different things that were put together by the team for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Tens of under each of these. And it does appear that they really tried to distill this, which I really appreciate all of you doing, because otherwise you can't get your arms around it. So that was a great idea to distill those to really key themes for the board members so we can get our heads around it. So, are there any glaring absences or things that we want to add to those things but before we go into discussion? Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, Jim, I was just going to say on that last slide, I mean, I agree with all of it. It seemed to me the only thing that was articulated that we might be able to actually move the needle on is teacher burnout and issues of that ilk. I mean, there's nothing we can really do about legislation until the state assembly and Senate do their work and we respond. So, but on teacher burnout, those are things that we might be able to come up with some plans to address. There might be some other things as well.
Agree. Okay, seeing no other comments, we have to remind the board, we have 2 more reports to fill our minds with, and then we're gonna look forward. So we have the Lcat progress report, which is really something the board, a few of you asked for this to kind of really get into some of our academic data as far as how we're performing and relative to our LCAP, which is how we're measured. And then the executive director has some background information she wants to share with us. So Lindsay, we'll turn it over to you. Why don't you go ahead and share? Thank you.
Hello, everybody. So we're going to do LCAP twice, just letting you know. We're going to do a quick thing today. Dr. Harrigan requested specifically an update on the progress of all of our goals, so we'll go through that. Tomorrow, there is a legislative requirement to go over the LCAP metrics, status, and expenditures. So tomorrow, we'll go into more depth about those LCAP measures, but Liz is sharing a document with us now on the screen. We've created this. It'll be presented to you. Oh, Kevin's happy. Yay! Again, tomorrow is part of our legislative requirement, as I mentioned. But you can see, and it was shared to you ahead of time, but it's a table of our goals and our actions from our LCAP. A reminder of the description of each goal and then the status update. And so I'm not meant to go through the details of each. You guys got this ahead of time. And like I said, again, we're going to go through it tomorrow, but it is available to you. And on the next presentation, I will categorize in one slide so you can see exactly a list of everything that's fully implemented, a list of everything that is partially, and a list of everything that's not yet implemented, just for some concise presentation. But I'm bringing this to your attention that it is it's been endorsed by Dr. Harrigan as a helpful document for you. And if you've seen it ahead of time, does anyone have any questions on any of the specifics if you read through it? Yes, Kevin.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I don't have a specific question, Lindsay. First of all, I would just like to thank you and staff for the way by which you prepared this document. I really value the opportunity to review it. Steve and I actually had a conversation yesterday afternoon, socially as well as just in terms of our meeting today. Steve, if I can share a couple of our thoughts, and you can chime in. But one of the things I was sharing with Steve is that this is the kind of information, and Jim, I wanted to share this with you as the president, but this is the kind of information that informs me of where we then need to support the organization with long-term and short-term strategic goals. And that while, yes, this is a mandated process, I do have to say in the scope of my career, I think it's one of the probably most informative school district-wide or school-wide instruments, even though all of its alliterations and revisions have been very taxing for staff. But I do think that it's something, when I see that a goal is partially implemented, then I ask myself, well, what does staff need to continue to successfully reach its full implementation? And how does that impact, maybe vision or goals, strategic planning, operational planning? So that's why this, for me, this kind of document really informs my ability to provide input to our strategic conversation.
Yeah, and I've talked to Liz. Obviously, we worked on this. As you can see, the expenditures on here. And just as a reminder to all in the meeting that we are in the middle of the school year, so any kind of implementation hindrance potentially could be just due to time, but it also could be due to lack of resources or just a barrier to the full implementation. So luckily, there's a little bit of a blurb for each one. Yes, Kevin.
And again, I apologize for talking so much around this, but another connection that I make is that, as Abigail was saying, there's so much that comes to our plates as teachers and administrators, and there are times then when something that was new, that we were required to do, that was a new implementation. When it moves to full implementation, and perhaps even it's institutionalized to a portion as a best practice, and it's serving us well, then we can take it off, because we have to take some things off. We can't keep layering more and more and more on Jana, you understand what I'm saying here. You can't. It's the intention around curriculum development cycles. It's why they're a cycle. That there's an opportunity for awareness of learning and teaching, implementation, and then institutionalizing. I'll use that word, or becoming best practices. So I just want to bring to our attention that when we're doing something well, when it is fully implemented, it's not that we stop doing it, but we may not need to give it then the same level of energy in our practice or in our emphasis of strategic plan. So.
Thank you. So I will, if Liz wants to just roll into the presentation, there's a slide, Liz. I started with a slide. So we're going to roll right into the strategic plan background. I will be summarizing the last chart in one slide, and then Ms. Tracy Williams will be presenting on special education, and then Teresa House on CTE and ELD, Jana on staffing, and then I'll wrap up on data. So that'll be the presentation. So here's the recap, and it's actually, there is a revision, and I apologize, it happened extremely recently in the ELD implementation. So you'll see the fully implemented aspects of our LCAP here on the left. We're really excited. that we have these, and like Dr. Harrigan said, when they're fully implemented, a lot of energy no longer has to go into those things in terms of development or continued implementation. You can kind of let those ones roll. We have a partially implemented list, some because of a timeline, right? Like some things come through time, and others there are some barriers that we will get through in order to reach full implementation. And in the not yet implemented category, the ELD teacher, which is the last one partially implemented, has now recently been moved. We're working on that. Teresa's going to report on that. But we, if you had read the blurb, but I'll say it out loud, we had an ELD position filled. That person has since resigned from that particular role, and so we're looking to refill that position. So it's kind of in flux right now. It's been a challenge, but we're working on it for sure, and Teresa will talk to that. So that's the list there, just in a concise way. But like I said, you can ask questions later today when Jim's putting the SWOT together, or tomorrow during the regularly scheduled board meeting. And I'll pass it to Tracy on the next slide to talk about special education.
Thanks, Lindsay. Good morning, everyone. I am going to give you a tour of special education in the quickest way I can. The first slide is our robust team that hasn't changed very much over the past 4 years. We're fortunate we have a full-time school psychologist now at North Bay and a full-time school counselor in San Diego. So we're very appreciative of that. Okay, Liz. The next two slides are to show you basically the student body that we have within special education at each site. I do want to point out that our new students that have come to us this year have increased greatly, and also have come with more challenges and needs than we've ever seen before. So if you look at San Diego, we have a total of 22 students in special education. New students were 7 this year. And the disabilities are listed, but down below under the disabilities, it says interim students that came to us with more than 30% of SPED services was 3 students. That's 43% increase of students that need more services, more time, and came from a specialized setting. Okay, and that could be an SDC setting, that could be a non-public school or residential treatment center. So we're starting to see a larger number of students that have more needs and higher level disabilities. We have looked at learning loss also within our students, and we are seeing that there is more learning loss that we're targeting. And at San Diego, we're looking at 3 so far, and we've had 1 student graduate. Riverside has been the biggest site with more new students this year, with 23 new students. And 27% of those students are students that have needed more attention and more accommodations and increase of services. And we have 7 students that we are targeting to specialize on learning loss. Okay, Liz. Our North Valley site has 26% special education. We have currently 4 students that were with us prior that had an increase of over 30% specialized academic services. And this year, the new students, 4 students are new students with specialized academic services of over 30%. And we had 5 prior. We have 4 students that have targeted for learning loss, and we this year alone have already graduated 2 students from that site. North Bay has had 41 new students come to Pivot in special education, and 49% of those students that came to us have needed 30% or more specialized academic instruction, or have come to us from a a more restrictive setting. And so we have targeted that there are 16 students that we really need to focus on providing more intensive services, differentiation of instruction to help support their learning loss. And currently, North Bay has graduated from September to now 4 students in special education as well. The ways in which we are approaching working with our diverse community is all of these different interventions and strategies. And I think that a lot of the approach that we have come to is looking at project-based learning. Professional development has been something that we're looking at, and working more towards growing into bringing different types of instruction to our students. We're increasing our staffing because we're bursting at the seams. And then currently right now, we are formulating a plan to bring in a modified curriculum for our students that have more challenges. And one of the programs that we're looking at is unique learning systems, which will modify the curriculum to give them access to learning at their Common Core standards. These are just some of the approaches, but I think the biggest key that's made our adjustments to our clients has been the collaboration and the working as a team effort with all staff, not just the ECs, but even the staff at site to support our students' growth and development. And so this is where we're going. We have a lot of work ahead of us, and I don't see our population and our student needs changing anytime soon. I think they're going to become more intensified. So that's kind of where we are in a nutshell. I am appreciative of the board's support and staff and school support on working with our team and the constant changes and the many, many IEP meetings that we do have. Does anyone have questions regarding special education, disabilities?
Questions or comments from board members? That is definitely a lot of things you're dealing with and a lot of students. Wow. Okay, Dr. Halverson, why don't you go first, and then Ralph Holmes.
So over the last couple of years, right now you're over 20% on an average per site. Is it increased substantially in the last 2 or 3 years?
Since I came on to Pivot, I've seen an increase. It's decreased a little bit at the beginning of this year, but we're starting to increase again. But I think the most important thing for me to emphasize to you, Dr. Halverson, is that the needs in which our students are coming in are more severe, and they're not a typical resource student. And so,
right. My concern is I saw some of the list. It was these weren't just kids who get an extra little bit of time to help out with certain academics, which should be more, not call them regular school, more traditional, where most of the time is spent and money is spent. But some of these can be. We dealt with some that were very consuming of resources for one person because of their circumstances, which were really sad in many ways. But this could be a huge, well, it is a huge issue monetarily and time, and the people that can do it. Some of those things you listed be surprising, and some districts wouldn't have 3 or 4 of them, period. In some severe cases, we've had them, but so this to me is a big deal, and it's getting more, severe, I guess, in some ways, like a better term, that we have to deal with. I mean, these kids need it. There's no doubt about that.
absolutely.
On the other hand, and how do you deal with it, on distance learning and all the other things that go related to all this? How in the world you fool with it? So, something needs to be, I guess it has been, but this is huge. I mean, really big.
You're correct. And Gina and I have been working together on this. And actually, we have started this conversation probably about 3 years ago. We started to see the pendulum swinging with students coming to us with more needs. We're getting very creative. You are absolutely correct. Fiscally, it is a big challenge. But I think if we can think outside of the box, look at the dynamic individuals that work for Pivot, then I think that we can create a program that really does meet our students' needs in a very holistic way. Ralph, did you have a question?
Please go ahead, Ralph.
I mean, I think that Dr. Halverson really kind of hit some of my concerns or questions. I guess I'd say that do we know why this is happening?
Well, I mean, I've done my background. I spend a lot of my time on the phones with new families and parents that are coming in. And I want you guys to know that this is constantly changing. So from the time I prepared this last Friday, I have 5 new students, 4 of which came into North Valley. And 3 of those came from like a special day class setting or an autism class. When I speak to parents, the majority of them is they've had poor experiences in the larger traditional track setting. Their children sat at the back of the class. They weren't provided instruction that they felt was effective. Additionally, that we have in Riverside, parents are coming by and they're seeing the site and they see that it's a very individualized program. And they want that for their student because they see that their student deserves the time and the instruction, but they're dedicated to their child.
Yeah.
So a lot of dissatisfaction within the traditional track settings.
Okay. I guess one follow-up question, and I mean, again, these kids need help and services, and I understand it as a father of a special needs kid. I know the deal. But do we know what the impact is for us financially, and just, can we afford it? And yeah, I mean, that's always.
Jana, yeah, I get it. And I'm going to ask Jana to give me the nod to go ahead, trying to give a summation because, go ahead, Jana.
I couldn't hear the question because the volume's down. If you could.
Financially, the impact of us. And
Well, I put a little comment in the comment section because I didn't want to interrupt Tracy, but our numbers are not extremely higher than they were the past 4 or 5 years. We've gotten as high as 25%, but as Tracy noted, it's not the percentage of special ed students as much anymore because we're used to that 20-21% at this point. It is the severity. So, but go ahead and clarify.
So Jana and I've had a lot of conversations walking into this year because we've seen the pattern change for our students. And we have to be very responsible in making sure that our students receive educational benefit and they're in their least restrictive environment where they're accessing general education as much as possible. To do that, some of our students won't benefit unless we provide them a specialized program or place them in outside districts. And currently right now, as I ran numbers, it's roughly over $600,000 to place the few students that we have into outside programs. The problem is we're on such a shortage of teachers in special education that even establishing a contract with one of our local districts or authorizers is far and few between. And I've been working with our SELPA on looking at those opportunities. And so it would be most advantageous for us to find a specialized instructor and to create our own programs and do it from within and explore that opportunity and explore the type of curriculums that really would benefit those students that need more broken down to them at their level and provided the opportunity to access their curriculum and Common Core standards, including life skills also.
Liz, you have a comment, and then I have some comments.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to speak to the, Ralph's question of can we afford this? And going off of what Tracy had said, if we do move forward with creative ways to serve these students in-house, with hiring and our own staff and aides and things like that, we do currently have several sources, several grants that can and will be used to fund these sorts of things. Some are specific to special education. Such as Tracy mentioned, the students who had been identified for the targeted learning recovery grant, but other COVID-related learning loss recovery things can also be used for this. But as you all have discussed before, that there are timelines on those, and they are only for a few years. So we currently are good for funding these things, at least in, over the next few years, but it will definitely take some, re-examining and being very careful and strategic about making sure we have those staffing options able to continue or find other grant funding sources, or, hopefully the state will increase its special education, funding. And we'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. But for the next few years, we should be okay if we can accomplish these things that Tracy and Jana have been working on to serve these students in-house with our own staffing.
So I would think that, reminding everybody, I have young children, a 13-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son, or 9-year-old now. So I see their friends, I see what's going on in the emotional status and development of elementary and teenage kids. And that combined with what I read, it seems to me that this population, because of COVID, is going to grow and get worse. The challenges are going to get harder. And it seems that the state, well, and also I believe it seems that we are more uniquely able to provide these services to those students, which is exactly why we have the school. I guess my question then becomes, though, Tracy, of sustainability and how are we able to manage these services. I would think the state is going to have to make more funding available. Clear. I mean, this is something that we have to address in education, period, in the country, not the state of California. So I guess as we look forward later today, this was an area I was actually interested in, because I would think that while our percentages may be not at their highest, towards their highest, and I would think they're going to get higher. I think families and coping and leaving kids alone and just all on and on and on. Your issues are difficult. Frankly, we are having an issue with our daughter, and just trying to find a counselor or a helper for cash is impossible. Now, we live in a more rural area, but they're packed. They're so full of kids with issues so it just seems to me that this is an area that is going to grow, not just at our school, but then again, is it something we embrace? And how do we fund it? So Jana, go ahead. I see your hand up.
Yeah, just two quick comments, because we'll probably dig into this later in more detail. But first of all, yes, we are uniquely positioned to serve these kids well, very well, not just because of the type of program we have, but because of Tracy and her team and the way they've developed the way to interact with the program that we have and make it be not just the separate special ed and separate general ed, but it's a whole, all inclusive and counseling. And we're working towards even a stronger model there, but they've done a wonderful job. And yes, this is happening across the country, if not across the world. And we do have pieces of legislation already drafted that will continue to bring more money to special education if they get approved in the state of California. The state ones probably will. They're looking at revamping the entire public education funding system. I don't think that will necessarily move this year, but it'll happen pretty quickly, which also may help special education. But as you know, on the federal level, special education is completely underfunded. They give us this tiny little piece, so it's all on the states. I think that will also change. But these grants, and Liz works very, very closely with Tracy on these, and then Tracy and I work on the programmatic end. I just agree to what she says she wants to do because she's really good at it. But she's got these great ideas, and Liz and she work out the finances. So these grant programs are going to help us the next couple of years. They've done a fabulous job on giving these to our SELPA and making sure that we get our hands in that little coffer.
Thank you. Other comments, questions? Tracy, we certainly appreciate you. You and your team do miracle work, and it's so important. So thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that'll be discussed later this morning. Okay, does this presentation continue, Jana? Oh, here we go. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, this is my part. I didn't know someone else was going to speak in between. Thank you, Chairman Lewis and Pivot board members, for allowing me this time to share this information with you. Does everyone hear me okay? We okay?
Yes.
Great. Just want to do a sound check. So my name's Teresa House. I'm the Curriculum and Assessment and Project Coordinator at Pivot, and one of my programs right now is
sort of looking at what CTE looks like at Pivot. So I'm going to talk to you about our CTE career experience pathways. That has a defined title because I wanted to differentiate our pathways from taking an elective CTE course in our Edmentum offerings. So there's a difference. They still get CTE credit, but there is a difference between the pathway program and just taking a CTE course. So the courses are designed, and when I speak with this, I'm talking about our pathway courses. The courses are designed to develop knowledge and skills necessary for success in a chosen pathway. These are experiential learning opportunities. So what differentiates these, the career experience pathways from taking an Edmentum CTE course, is the experiential learning that goes with that we feel is so important for students. So with that experiential learning, what we mean by that would be hands-on projects, field trips, guest speakers, industry professionals within that industry, whether it's a guest speaker or a mentor program. And it's all going to look different for each pathway, but really connecting them with the local industry professionals. And then local regional competitions when they're available. So that really helps provide this, it gives the student a different relationship with the content, and it really connects them with who they could be, or seeing what the possibilities are in the future for this particular career industry. And then pathway participation in Capstone options. So I'm going to back up just a second on that. So technically, according to the state of California, a pathway is at least 2, possibly 3 connected courses in a series of escalating experiences and skill building that lead to this pathway. And the final course is called their Capstone course. And Capstone has some unique features to it. And the idea of a capstone is you have something, students walk away with something tangible. And that could be internships within that career field. Dual enrollment, we spoke to that earlier in our college and career. Luis spoke to that. And I'm excited to be partnering with Luis on what these will look like regionally. So the capstone is meant to lead to something tangible for the students as they finish this pathway. So, and it would depend on the pathway, and it depends on what the student would like. So again, the internships, dual enrollment at a community college, and sometimes if it's applicable, a certification in that industry. So that would depend on the particular industry. And so those are the capstone. And then what are we doing right now? We currently have 3 pilot programs underway. The first one is the Business Design and Management course, and that's offered for San Diego and Riverside students. That begins next week, actually. And Gail Gonzalez-Colon is our instructor. We have Animal Science happening in North Valley. That will begin in our next block, April 4th through June 10th. And Tara Wigglesworth is the instructor for that one. And last, our Plant and Soil Science pathway will be at North Bay, and that course starts in our next block, starting April 4th through June 10th, and Anna Toso is the instructor for that course. We have the projected courses, so this will be their intro course to this pathway. And again, it's a series of connected courses. So the concentrator level course will be the Pathway 2A course, which will be in the fall of 2022. And then the capstone level course for the students that want to finish this through completion will be in spring 2023. So a year from now. And so before I go on to the ELD program, does anyone have questions about the CTE programs underway?
Questions? I learned that some of the staff has expertise I didn't realize. I want to take Anna's class. All right, keep going. Teresa, this looks great so far. Thank you.
Great. So now I'm going to talk about our ELD program that's under development. We're looking at
planning to offer synchronous online designated ELD sessions for middle school and high school students. And just to say, when you're looking at an English language development program, there's two sides to it. It's a two-sided coin. There's integrated English language development strategies, and then there's a designated ELD program, and they're different in nature. So we're starting with the designated ELD, which is time that students have that is dedicated to language development. So it's not really saying this is your English class or this is your science class. This is language development, developing those skill sets for English language. And that's the designated ELD program. And to look at that, we're reviewing curriculum. Two of them are under review right now. Cengage, which is a division of National Geographic, they offer ELD program, as well as another program called English 3D. So those are the two that we're really looking at closely to see which one we may want to adopt. Any questions? And again, this speaks to the conversation that was happening earlier today about reaching out to our Spanish-speaking populations and how we've increased the number of students who really need these services. So I feel that this is happening really at a crucial time for Pivot.
Questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, please continue. Great.
Yep. Thank you, Teresa. I appreciate that. And I can't begin to tell you how grateful I am that Teresa comes in with the expertise that she does, that I was able to say, hi, we're going to do a real different ELD program and you're in charge of it. And she just took it and ran with it. And we knew that when we hired her that she had that experience and expertise, and she's done an amazing job. This slide just speaks for itself. We've had 2 teaching staff members at North Bay that were educational coordinators resign. We have a total, just in the last 2 weeks, we have a total of 4 educational coordinator positions vacant. We have open positions available for our attendance and data clerk, 2 paraprofessional aides, an ELD teacher now, math intervention specialist, and 1 to 2 education specialist, depending on the numbers any day that you look at those numbers. But we are in the process of interviewing for all of the above. I think the only thing we haven't interviewed for is the ELD church here, because that's fairly new. But that's the state of the state on staffing.
So how many staffing positions, do we have like 78 positions? What's our number?
Full-time equivalency is 74, I want to say. Am I correct, Brittany? And Brittany's shaking her head. It's about 74 full-time.
So I would just say, I mean, an organization our size, this is definitely felt, but it's still 10% or less, which is really good. I mean, in this current economy and market, believe me,
Yeah.
if you're 90% fully staffed, that's, I'm not saying we ignore this or anything, Jane. I'm saying
Yeah,
perspective.
yeah.
As you look, as I talk to other CEOs and look at organizations with the great resignation and people not coming back to work,
Yeah.
that's actually speaks to the commitment of all of you and the commitment of your teams. I mean, that's incredible. I know we've worked with it, but I just want to put perspective on that. I'm surprised and grateful that that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Still a lot of work, don't get me wrong.
Oh, no, absolutely. Brittany just corrected me. It's 82 employees.
Yeah, so that's,
yeah. Yeah, no, I know. We just, and in education though, it has an impact. So, anyway, any questions from the board for me on the staffing slide? It's just to give you background information for your conversations.
I don't see any. Keep going.
Okay, so I've presented supporting data documents to you. You got those ahead of time, so this is just going to be a summary of those documents. If you have any questions, we can refer to the documents. But demographically, we have we're not higher in all subgroup populations across the state, but we do show high numbers compared to the state and local districts in certain areas. So you can see here, North Bay, socioeconomically disadvantaged and homeless foster youth is high when compared to the local districts in the counties. And so this is just a recap. It is anticipated based on the numbers that I've seen, obviously because I see the numbers a lot, that the English learner population data for that will be published next year, which will reflect this school year because the published data is about a year behind. I do believe will be some of the higher numbers that Pivot's ever seen. We've gotten quite a few English learners at some of our schools. So in San Diego and Riverside especially, those numbers will increase on next year's dashboard, I believe. Go ahead. Okay. Our enrollment, we're always tracking our enrollment. And we are low this school year. We're not where we would want to be, except for Riverside. Riverside has really taken off. Shout out to Bill Collegia there working hard. Communicating with our families about our program. The site's beautiful. Riverside's really doing great on enrollment. We always see a slight dip in enrollment around this time. Students, they try our program, or parents make decisions about their students' education, and they decide, well, now's the time because they want to transition when the semesters change from fall to spring, which is a smart decision. Students really shouldn't be transferring school in the middle of a term. We would love our students to, reach a full year so that the transition isn't as disruptive. But we do always see a dip around this time, and we're actually seeing an increased enrollment for the opposite reason. People are at their traditional school going, fall's not working out. I'm going to try spring at a different school. So there's always a little shuffle around this time. And then we've seen a significant increase in elementary enrollment this year at our schools that serve elementary populations. Families of elementary students are really thinking about their school options during this current climate. And, they're worried about a couple things like, vaccination mandates or, at-home learning or COVID in general. There's not one reason people are going to our school. It's just the fact that they're a little more aware of options than they ever have been before. So we've seen a really big increase in elementary enrollment this school year. I did provide withdrawal data that I don't normally present, only because I was curious about, the different types of withdrawals. So as students leave Pivot, it could be that they're going to another school or that they're graduating. And we don't want to see a dip, an increase in student withdrawals or student numbers and think, oh no, they're all leaving. We're actually seeing a lot of graduates, and that's really good news. We love to graduate students. There's a legislation that passed to adjust the graduation requirements for certain students impacted by COVID. And we have seen that has increased some of our graduation for students who may not have been able to graduate without that legislation. So that's really good for some of those students who needed it. And our withdrawal trends are consistent. We're not seeing an increase in withdrawals as compared to previous terms. So when you're asking, why is everyone leaving? It's pretty typical, the numbers that we're seeing. So nothing alarming there. And then lastly, the credits. We are a little bit behind because we're still in the fall semester. So the credit data is of spring of last year after finalizing report cards. And we have some things to really celebrate here. North Bay saw a significant increase in the percentage of students who are earning 25 or more credits. Abigail spoke to the success. She's the North Bay site administrator. She spoke to how last year was a really successful year, and it's showing in the credit data. So big shout out to North Bay. There's two data metrics. We're looking at students who are earning 25 credits or more, and then also just average credits per student. And so their change might be in both categories or just one, but those are two metrics we're looking at. North Valley's still struggling to hit their targets, but they did increase the metric of average credits earned by students. So we're watching that data really closely and having those conversations. And then Riverside and San Diego has always shown a pretty strong metric here. But even though those numbers have always been strong, they actually also showed growth. And so, as you know, when you're strong, it's actually harder to grow. So that's a really big achievement to grow. Even though it's a small growth, they were already pretty high. So we're really excited about that data as well. I believe that's my last slide. Any questions about the data, any specifics? And of course, we can talk about it later when Jim has our team discussion. Okay, great. Thank you.
No questions from the board? All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Lindsay. That was an amazing summary. I actually like the actual data, and I know some of you do also, which is why Lindsay sent that out to you in advance, but her summary was fabulous. Hats off to all of our sites for the improvement in the credits earned, regardless of the area. And again, that's what Abigail and everybody these last 2 days, to be honest with you, Abigail was just tagged to present that information to you. That's what everyone is talking about. Why was last year so successful, and what can we learn from that, and what can we do to continue that moving forward? What I texted Chairman Lewis, and I said lunch is at from 12:15 to 12:45 here at where the leadership team is residing. So we're going to keep going until lunch, because people have been taking their own personal breaks. Board members, please feel free to take your own personal breaks if need be, and turn off your camera or whatever you need to do. But we're going to go, we decided we're going to go until 12:15 or 12:10, so we can get out to lunch on time out on the lawn, and then we'll come back at a very, very timely 12:45 to continue. So, Chairman.
Okay.